Ken Royal here. I'm in Washington, D.C. Next to me is Dr. Chris-Dede. He is the Timothy E. Wirth, a professor in learning technologies. Did I get that right?
You did. You did.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Harvard University has a lot of professors with endowed chairs. And Tim Wirth, who was a United States Senator and who currently runs Ted Turner's United Nations Foundation, Tim was head of the visiting committee at the Harvard Ed School and pushed strongly that Harvard move into technology, and so they endowed a chair in his name, and I have the honor of being the first holder of that chair.
So here, okay, Chris, why are you here at the 2012 EdTech conference?
Well, one of my major fields of research is emerging technologies, and of course mobile learning has been huge as an emerging technology for years. And I was very happy when I was approached by Qualcomm and they said, we want to do thought leadership in this sector, and can you help us put on a conference? And so for 3 years I've been involved with helping them do a conference that brings all the stakeholders together across the different parts of mobile learning and wireless broadband, and it's fabulous. We spend about a day and a half together, and we share success stories, and we share challenges, and we try to sort things out across the different stakeholders. So it's terrific.
And what are those? Who are those stakeholders? Because some people may not know what those people are.
Sure.
Or who those people are.
Well, of course, students are stakeholders in all of this, and parents and their families, communities, because mobile permeates the community. It's not something that takes place at a single location like a school or a university. And then, of course, the vendors are a big part of this as the people who develop it, not only the device vendors and the network vendors, but also the different groups that generate curriculum of various types in professional development. And then there's a huge policy dimension to this. And finally, I represent the scholarly community that tries to pour some gasoline on the fire in terms of bringing knowledge to bear on these things.
Chris, I was at the first EdTech wireless conference in 2010. What's different about what happened then to what's happening now?
The first conference, Mobile Learning, was really in its infancy. And it was a vision-oriented conference because many people were skeptical about mobile learning or even banning mobile learning in school settings. And we were trying to show that this had considerable power, and so we brought in pioneers who were talking about the exciting things that they were doing, and then we brought in people that we felt were influentials who could be impressed, who could go back, who could talk it up. Now, mobile learning is in its adolescence. A lot of people are doing it. Schools that banned it are now on board with things like bring your own device or one-to-one initiatives. So we're past the kind of we need vision part, even though the visions are still important. We're much more into the what are the next steps? How do we grow up beyond adolescence? And what do we need to know still? What do we have to build on? Who are the key players at this point, and how do we get them working together? So for me, it's sort of like the parent watching their child grow up from infancy to adolescence, and on the one hand feeling excited about it, and on the other hand trying to think about what comes next.
That's a great way to look at it. Chris, I was recently at a meeting at Cambridge, MIT near Boston, and they were talking about scaling, and it was a higher ed person who was talking about this. And I heard you mention that today. What are you talking about when you're talking scaling?
Scaling up is something that's been very difficult in education. In industry, scaling up is pretty straightforward. If I invent a better way of frying French fries, 6 months later, every fast food restaurant in the country is going to be doing that. In education, in contrast, we have trouble scaling an innovation down the hall, let alone across a school or a campus, regionally, nationally, across the world. People are not French fries. And there's enormous variability in the context of education, so you're not following a recipe, you're adapting, you're modifying in innovation. So working in about 2002, I built on a framework that Cynthia Coburn at Berkeley had developed for thinking about scale and developed a 5-dimensional way that people can analyze scale and can design for scale. I've applied it to a wide variety of things and found that it works well. But now mobile learning is at a point where we can start to really think about scale, because we have something now that's worth scaling. We have our own success stories and models. And of course, mobile devices have scaled beautifully. They've been like the French fries, but the learning doesn't scale quite as easily. So at this conference and in other venues, I think we're going to be increasingly discussing the 5 dimensions of scale: depth, sustainability, spread, shift, and evolution, and beginning to understand how mobile learning can grow on all of those dimensions.
Chris, I love the idea of that you have 5 dimensions of how to scale here. Where can we see more about that, learn more about it?
I have professional web pages that people are welcome to access. They include things like our work on scale. They include links to my different research projects. They include my course syllabi, as open as Harvard lets me have them, because it's sharing the ideas that's really important. So that URL is http://isites, ISITES.harvard.edu/Chris_Dede. And I hope that you'll go and take a look at scale and at other kinds of resources, and then let me know what you think.
That's Chris. I love when I get someone like you standing next to me and talking with me to ask about future think. What are you thinking as far as the plan down the road? Because plans have to be alive today.
Well, in 2010, I was one of 15 people who were on the technical working group for the National Educational Technology Plan in the United States. And that plan is a good place to start. It's maybe not a good place to stop, because we all want to keep growing in our visions, but it presents a very interesting vision, I think, of a 21st century educational system that prepares students for the global, knowledge-based, innovation-centered economy, instead of a 20th century school system that prepares students for the industrial economy, or even in Harvard's case, a medieval era educational system. And as we look at the National EdTech Plan, a lot of the things that need to happen technically are occurring. The big challenge is on the human side, building the human capacity to take advantage of these very powerful technologies and infrastructures that we're generating, building the political will and the public will to be willing to make a leap, as we did a century ago when we made a leap from the rural one-room schoolhouse to the industrial era school, to now make a similar leap to 21st century learning. So I'm optimistic that that's going to happen, but it's going to take a lot of hard work.
And 12 years into the century, we should get there pretty,
I would hope so, because we have a lot of kids who are losing out because we don't have a 21st century educational system in place.
Chris, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you.
Ken Royal here in Washington, D.C.